This is Change Your Mindset Podcast, the podcast that helps change your life by helping change the mindset of the 99% into the 1% mindset. Here's your host, Adrian Gomez.
Welcome back, everybody, to Change Your Mindset Podcast. I'm your host, Adrian Gomez. In this podcast, we're going to be talking about monopolies. We think we have choices when it comes to whether it's food, television, products, whatever it may be. But at the end of the day, these big companies and corporations are buying out all these little businesses, and they pretty much own everything. So in reality, we really don't have any choices. So it gets to the point, is this really a fair market? Because if these monopolies own pretty much all these little businesses and buy them out and own pretty much everything, how is it a fair market? Technically, monopolies are supposed to be broken up, but obviously they are not because they continue to grow. For example, I'm pretty sure everyone knows Disney. Disney is probably one of the biggest monopolies. Obviously, they buy out their competitors. For example, Pixar. Pixar was a big competitor for Disney. Obviously, the movies with Toy Story and everything, they had a lot of great movies, and obviously they were a big competitor to Disney. So what did Disney do? They didn't compete with them, they bought them out. So now they own Pixar. And can go the same thing with Marvel. Marvel began the franchise with the Iron Man. Obviously that took off from there. And what did Disney end up buying? They bought out Marvel. And you could say the same thing. Look what happened to Lucasfilm. Obviously, they created Star Wars and everything. And who owns Star Wars now? Disney. And that's just the main big ones. We're not even getting into other companies they own. For example, they also own ABC. They have an 80% stake in ESPN. They have a 50% stake in holding, obviously, in A&E. The History Channel, they own 50% holding with them as well. Lifetime, 50%. The list goes on and on. These monopolies, they control all these businesses and they buy out the competitors. One of the biggest monopolies that is obviously really sabotaging a lot of small businesses is Amazon. We all know what Amazon is. Obviously, I buy things from Amazon. I'm sure if you're going to listen to this podcast, you probably bought things from Amazon. Obviously, it's very convenient. And obviously, with the Amazon Prime, you get free shipping. You get it within a couple of days usually. It's very convenient. And obviously, everyone loves Amazon. But Amazon's one of the biggest monopolies ever. And one thing I realized that they do, they also have other stores that people obviously sell on Amazon. So there are other businesses that sell on Amazon's website. And as I'm told that if you sell a product on Amazon and that product does very, very well on Amazon, Amazon sees that that product is doing very well on the website. So what they do is they make that same exact product that's doing very well. They sell it for cheaper than what obviously the business that made that product. And now eventually that business is going to go out of business because Amazon just made that same exact product for cheaper now, and they just took that business and now they're no longer selling Amazon because Amazon just eliminated them. And there's a good amount of examples of that happening. It's unfortunate that Amazon is taking out smaller businesses like this because it's not really a fair play. And it's kind of unfair if you're selling on a website and that website is now making the products that you sell for cheaper. And it's very sad and unfortunate. People can't survive because these monopolies are taking out these little businesses. So it's unfortunate. Wish the government would do something about it and break up these monopolies, but it's unfortunate because they are not. These monopolies just keep growing and growing. I can give an example from personal experience. Obviously, this happened with my father because, as I said before, my father owned his own business. He had his transportation business. Well, he had his truck drivers, and they would obviously transport goods with their giant rigs. So every so often the government or the state, whatever, would pass these laws that these trucks can no longer be used in the ports because whether it's carbon emission, whatever it is, that if your truck does not pass or does not have a certain, new upgraded carbon emission, whatever it was, because usually the new model trucks supposedly have these in them, and if your truck doesn't have them, your truck can't go on the port, so you can't do business. So what happened was these little businesses had to buy new trucks, which was required by the state or the government that they had to buy these new trucks. And obviously, if you're a small businesses, trucks are expensive. These trucks are, some of them are worth six figures, some of them are worth half of that, but they're very expensive trucks. I mean, you see them on the freeway, they're giant rigs. So with these small businesses having to buy new trucks where they can keep being in business, they're going to struggle because it's not cheap and they have to go into debt to buy these trucks. And a lot of these small businesses went out of business. My father was able to obviously be able to buy these trucks, but so he didn't go out of business, but a lot of businesses did. So obviously these big companies that obviously, I mean, so you heard of them like JB Hunt, all these other big trucking and transportation companies, they're not going to have a problem with this because they have lots of money. They're big corporations. They're kind of like monopolies in a way because they're giant companies. So they can afford these new trucks, but that just eliminates competition. So now all these small businesses are going out of business because they can't afford these new trucks that the government's making them pretty much get for they can continue their businesses. So now that's pretty much eliminating competition now. And obviously the big companies are going to be at the top now, and these little businesses are no longer going to be in business, and their customers are eventually end up going to go to those bigger companies because they're still in business. So from personal experience, that was something that happened to my father, and obviously it happened one time, and before he closed the business, it almost happened. Well, it actually did happen again, but he closed the business before that they wanted them to buy newer trucks again. So obviously he was just pretty much done with it because it's a losing battle in that business, and he was out of retirement anyway, so he just ended up closing the business and retiring. Well, that's just another example, even from personal experience, of obviously how these monopolies work. Obviously, the people at the top, they get bigger and bigger, while these little businesses, unfortunately, go out of business. So it's not really a fair market anymore. And it's unfortunate because you want there to be a fair market, because obviously with capitalism, if there's multiple people selling similar products, it's competition. So obviously, as a consumer, they're going to buy whatever is cheaper. So if someone has something cheap, they're going to go with the cheaper company. So that means they're going to have to start cutting each other's prices. So whoever has the cheapest product, the consumer ends up winning at the end of the day because they're paying for the cheapest product. So obviously these businesses have to obviously compete for the consumer's money because that's how obviously they survive and grow. But so if there is competition, they start cutting each other, and at the end of the day, the consumer wins. So obviously, if you're listening to this podcast and you buy products, that's what you want. But if these big monopolies are taking out these small businesses or buying out these small businesses, there's no competition anymore. So that means they can't cut the big monopolies prices. Say if the monopolies prices is, this small example, $20, and this small business's same product is $10. Obviously, you're going to go with the small business's product because it's cheaper, right? So if the monopoly buys out that business that sells the same product for $10 or a similar product, now you're forced to buy the monopoly's product at $20. So at the end of the day, you're losing and the monopoly wins. That's why these monopolies are buying out all these small businesses, or with all these regulations from the government, these regulations are taking out small businesses, and these big monopoly businesses are winning because they can afford these regulations, and it eliminates the small businesses. So now you're forced to pay these higher prices because of these monopolies, and there's no more fair market. So at the end of the day, the monopolies win, you lose. So when you go to the market, you think you have options, right? You think you have choices because there's so many different brands. Maybe there's a brand you like, maybe there's a brand you don't like. You think there's a lot of options. But at the end of the day, there are actually 10 monopolies that pretty much own basically all the brands in that supermarket. So even if you go on the website, you can look it up. You'll see 10 monopolies that pretty much own a whole bunch of brands. So I'm just going to go over a few of them, and I'm pretty sure you heard these brands before. So first one is Nestle, Coca-Cola, PepsiCo, General Mills, and Kellogg's. So that's just half of them. The name brands I'm sure you heard of, and those brands own a lot of other brands. So those are pretty much the biggest monopolies in the food market. Obviously, you go to the market, you end of the day you really don't have any choice. You're picking one of those brands, monopolies, products. Like I said, you think you have choices, but unfortunately, you really don't, because nowadays all these monopolies are buying out these small businesses and pretty much controlling everything. So it's very difficult for small businesses nowadays, unfortunately, with these monopolies and the government not breaking these monopolies. Another example of this, I'm pretty sure you probably seen yourself when the pandemic happened. A lot of businesses had to close down because we were in a lockdown. So obviously you couldn't go out and eat or anything. And I've seen it a lot locally as well myself. When it happened, when everything opened up again, a lot of small businesses went out of business, obviously, because they have no customers. They're not receiving any revenue. So they still have to pay for, obviously, the rent and all that. And since there's no money coming in, they can't pay for the rent. So obviously they go out of business. And I'm pretty sure you've seen in town or locally wherever you're at, you see a lot of businesses that were there before the pandemic and after the pandemic. Now those businesses are gone, unfortunately. But I bet you still see the big businesses because obviously they have enough money to pay the rent, and obviously they can get through a lot of things. So unfortunately, during that time frame, a lot of small businesses went out of businesses. And even where I'm from at, these businesses were here for a long time. And when that happened, now they're no longer here, unfortunately. And there are some businesses that were fortunate to survive and obviously open up again. And till this day, they are still currently running. So just because these monopolies are around doesn't mean you can't start a business. Whatever your business is, obviously there's going to be a bigger business and they're probably going to want to eliminate you. So obviously if you start a business and start entrepreneurship, like you said, there's a lot of tax benefits, and at the end of the day, this is how, rich people are pretty much are made, through businesses, real estate, stuff like that. You can still do it. Like I said, this is still United States of America. You still have the opportunity to do it. So you want to start a business, start a business. Like I said, just because these monopolies are around doesn't mean you can't do it. Yes, it'll be difficult. Like I said, you have to work really hard, but you can still make it. Obviously, these monopolies are either going to try to take you out because obviously you're going to be undercutting their prices because, that's how you get their customers and stuff. Or, worst comes to worst, if you become a good company and very successful, more than likely these monopolies can't get you out or, get you out of business. Eventually, they'll just buy you out. And obviously, you can make a lot of money if one of these monopolies buys your business. You'll make maybe millions. So, there's always opportunity if you want to take that route as well. That's one way you can be a millionaire. But like I said, just because these monopolies are around, it does make things difficult. We all know a lot of these monopolies are in cahoots with the government. They pass a lot of laws that benefit monopolies, unfortunately. So it's hard for the little businesses, to survive. But you just gotta find these ways to get around it. You can, like I said, undercutting monopolies' prices and selling things cheaper. That's obviously gonna give you customers and take away customers from these monopolies. It's 100% possible. Like I said, it's gonna be difficult, but you can do it. Just because they're around doesn't mean you can't start a business. So just don't be down by it. I just want you to be aware, like nowadays, these monopolies own a lot of things, and we think we have choices when we buy stuff, but at the end of the day, the monopolies pretty much own a lot of the things we buy nowadays. And as the consumer, obviously you're purchasing whether it's food, products from these monopolies. I mean, it's always good to go with small businesses because majority of the time they're usually small mom and pop stores, and obviously the prices are going to be cheaper than these monopolies and these name brands because obviously they're trying to survive. They're trying to live the American dream. They want to do entrepreneurship. Like I said, yeah, it is difficult, and you see all the time support small businesses. Obviously, I have a small business myself. Starting a small business is one of the best things you can do financially. Obviously, it's one of the biggest risks. And starting a business, I mean, there's a lot of chances that you more than likely will fail. But it's a lot of hard work if you're willing to put in the hard work. Sky's the limit. But like I said, just because these monopolies are around, if you want to support them, that's up to you. If you want to give them your money, that's totally up to you. That's your decision. Like I said, there's always alternatives. If you want to do like small mom and pop store, I'm pretty sure they have the same products. Whether the quality is better or not, I mean, it could be better quality than these monopolies. Majority of the time, it should be better quality because at the end of the day, these monopolies, they just care about quantity. So they're just trying to get out as much product as they can because at the end of the day, they want more consumers and they want your money. So obviously, these small mom and pop stores are going to make better products because they want your money over these monopolies because they're trying to fight these monopolies, which are way bigger than they are. And obviously, if they have better product than these monopolies, hopefully they can take the customer away from these monopolies and hopefully they can grow their business. So like I said, as a consumer side, that's totally up to you what you decide. If you want to support small businesses, that's totally up to you. If you want to continue supporting monopolies, that's totally up to you as well. It's your money. At the end of the day, you decide what to do with it. Like I said, I never tell you what to do with your money. I always give financial education. I never give financial advice. So whatever you do with it, it's totally up to you. I hope you understand with this podcast of monopolies that America is full of monopolies. They own a lot of brands that we consume. And like I said, we don't really have much of a choice. Obviously, supporting small businesses because now small businesses are disappearing. Like I said, because of the reasons that were stated previously, a lot of small businesses are either going out of business or people aren't even starting business anymore because they feel like they don't even have a chance anymore because of these monopolies. So, like I said, as long as these monopolies are around, as a consumer, you lose. Reason is, if there's so many monopolies and there's no small businesses, these monopolies can dictate the price. Whatever price they want their product to be, it will be that price. And as a consumer, you have to pay that price because where else are you going to get that product from? If there's no small businesses competing with these monopolies, since they're all either out of businesses, bought out, or didn't make it, or maybe they didn't even start, you're forced to pay these monopolies prices. So if they have high prices, unfortunately, you have no choice to pay these prices. That's the unfortunate thing with these monopolies. They dictate the prices of their products. And like I said, there are a couple monopolies in different fields. So like I said, you think you have options, but you really don't because they own all these brands. So at the end of the day, you're going to lose. Monopolies win. So as long as there are monopolies, and if I don't believe they will, unfortunately, ever be separated because that's something the government would have to do. But it's been years and years and nothing has happened. So at the end of the day, these monopolies get bigger and bigger. They buy out these small businesses. They put these small businesses out of business and they just get bigger, unfortunately. So the United States is supposed to be a fair market. Unfortunately, it isn't anymore with these monopolies. So as long as you know and aware of monopolies, and I mean, if you want to do the research yourself, like I said, if you want to see when you go to the market, all these brands, you can just literally type up the food monopoly, and you'll see a chart of the 10 monopolies from the foods industry, and you will see all the brands they own. And pretty much all the brands they own are all the brands you're going to see in the market. And you'll be pretty amazed that all these brands are owned by 10 monopolies, unfortunately. So at the end of the day, it's unfortunate because America has become monopolied. So as long as they're around, as a consumer, you will lose, because in a fair market, obviously everyone's trying to undercut each other, and the consumer wins in that case because they are paying for the cheapest products. But as long as the monopolies are around, these monopolies dictate the prices of the products. So this is something to think about. So a lot of people already know about monopolies, but if you didn't know about monopolies, now you know. You'll be pretty amazed how America is full of monopolies, unfortunately. But that's how it is nowadays, unfortunately. But hey, if you want to start a small business, totally up to you. You can do it. You just got to grind. It's a lot of hard work, but it's totally worth it if you can make it. And if you're a consumer and want to support small businesses, I support that as well. I always try to support small businesses because I know the struggle. It's a lot of hard work, and I respect the grind. So that's just what this podcast is about. So hopefully gives you some little nuggets on monopolies. So I appreciate you listening to this podcast. If you'd like to share it and teach other people about monopolies, by all means, I appreciate it. If you subscribe to whatever platform you're listening to this podcast, I appreciate it as always. Thank you for listening to this podcast. So I look forward to having a new podcast for you next Monday. So thank you again, and take care of yourself. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Change Your Mindset podcast. Be sure to tune in every week for a new episode. As always, change your mindset to change your life.